Hello and welcome to AI4. Our next session will be led by Marina Kaganovich. She is the Director, Corporate and Institutional Banking Compliance at BNP Paribas. Please join me in welcoming Marina to the virtual stage.
Hi, happy to be here. Let me just get the video started and share my screen, and then we'll be all set. There we go. Hi, everyone. My name is Marina Kaganovich. I'm very excited to be speaking about the use of AI in financial services. It's a topic I'm passionate about and one which I think will have tremendous transformative implications for financial services in the years to come. By way of a quick introduction, I'm a director in BNP Paribas' digital compliance team, where I look after the firm's digital initiatives, including the build-out of robotics and AI, as well as data privacy and cybersecurity. Prior to joining BNP a little over 4 years ago, I held a compliance advisory role in Goldman Sachs, where I supported the firm's technology and cybersecurity teams. And prior to that, I worked in a dual-hatted capacity as a regulatory attorney and compliance manager at Thomson Reuters. Before I proceed to the AI discussion, I'll just put my lawyer hat on and say, by way of disclaimer, that the views expressed in this talk are my own and do not represent the views of BNP Paribas. Let's start by taking a look at some implementation considerations. So there's a lot of conversation around AI, which has become a popular buzzword and is used in multiple contexts without a clear definition. What I've seen most often is that this term colloquially refers to the use of machine learning algorithms rather than to a Skynet type of advanced intelligence capable of independent thought and decision-making. Though I'm sure we'll come to see significant growth and innovation in this area, even in its current form, AI presents colossal opportunities for automation, digital innovation, and advancements in analytics and automated decision-making. In fact, FINRA recently published a paper on the use of artificial intelligence in the securities industry and noted that based on a survey of financial services executives, 77% expected that AI would be highly important to their business within the next 2 years. As with anything else, however, coupled with the opportunities for widespread AI deployment, the use of AI raises challenges as a result of the amplified impact that its use can have in making determinations regarding individuals, affecting their day-to-day lives, and by extension, society as a whole. AI is already being used in a wide range of activities, from screening resumes to pre-approving loans and credit card applications, and providing investment advice. The use and potential for misuse of AI algorithms is increasingly being discussed in the media and by policymakers and regulators globally in recognition of the far-reaching impacts of such applications, the direct and indirect influences that these have on consumers, and the consequences of amplifying data that may not be appropriate, having been obtained for one purpose and now used for another. Now, within the context of financial services, take, for example, the use of alternative data to inform decisions about life insurance underwriting, as discussed in the New York Department of Financial Services Insurance Circular Letter that was published in 2019, where they explored the use of external consumer data and other information sources in underwriting for life insurance policies. Specifically, in addition to traditional underwriting data sources that are used to determine the terms of an individual's life insurance policy, the circular discussed how lifestyle indicators, and I say that in quotes, could be used to contribute to the underwriting assessment for life insurance coverage. This is information that would come from external data sources and whose accuracy and reliability could vary significantly. As it would be used to further the AI's predictive analytics, the DFS reminded insurers to be vigilant and to consider the implications using this data may have on existing prohibitions against leveraging information related to protected classes in this type of decision-making. Even if not directly on point and implicating race, color, national origin, sexual orientation, or other types of protected class information, alternative data sources have the potential to serve as a proxy for this type of data, and to amplify inaccuracies and bias if the data is obtained from unvalidated or inaccurate sources, whether for innocent or nefarious reasons. On the whole, machine learning techniques are intended to take advantage of the tremendous amount of data that these firms have obtained and generated, providing a mechanism for leveraging it by analyzing and helping to visualize it in useful and often unique configurations, and generating actionable insights for both internal users and clients. Assuming that data quality and completeness issues have been resolved, and that data sets are available in a normalized form, we're left with questions about next steps. So for instance, is the data at hand appropriate for training AI tools? Does it contain personally identifiable information that requires enhanced access controls or encrypted transfer protocols? Does the data contain elements that, when amplified through the use of AI, can lead to biased decisions? Are appropriate supervisory structures in place to safeguard client data against unintended disclosure, or to enable a client to effectively challenge a determination made by the AI? And has the AI undergone sufficient training and testing such that its output is explainable and working as intended? These are just a few examples of the questions that arise and require further analysis as the financial services industry is inundated with tools that promise transformative results, or where firms are looking to build out their own tools to entice clients who are eager for digitally enabled enhancements that will make their experience quicker, easier, and more efficient, but also rightfully expect that their data is secure and any automated decision-making is adequately supervised. This is where, in my view, certain high-level guiding principles become apparent. So I came up with these principles based on globally issued white papers, industry publications, and legal and regulatory guidance, both directly referring to AI, as well as inferences drawn from other rules and regulations that, while not specifically meant to address AI development, nonetheless apply. I believe these are informative in developing a high-level approach to conducting an AI review and should be supplemented with other considerations as relevant to the particular firm's business, its regulators' expectations, and local legal requirements. So on the basis of this understanding, from my perspective, there's a few points to note. The data sets that are used for AI should be assessed with a view toward fairness and reducing the potential for bias. The decisions generated by the AI algorithm should be explainable. The AI should be thoroughly tested to ensure that it's functioning as intended. The end user should have a means of escalating concerns regarding the AI's output to a human for review. A kill switch should be available to shut the AI off if a malfunction is identified. And the development and implementation of AI algorithms should be appropriately supervised. So let's take a few minutes and delve into these topics in a bit more detail. So AI, while a powerful tool, is really only as good as the data that it's trained on. If the data contains elements that, for historical reasons, for instance, favor a particular outcome, then there's a likelihood that the AI may amplify that outcome in its results unless such impact is proactively taken into account. The potential for furthering inherent bias should therefore be thoughtfully considered when determining the data on which to train the AI and the weighting assigned to particular attributes. I read a really terrific book recently that is titled Invisible Women: Exposing Data Bias in a World Designed for Men. It's really well researched, and in it, the author, Caroline Perez, discusses the real-world implications for how data is used by AI, the importance of considering cleansing data prior to exposing it to the AI, and also, critically, how so much of the focus is on the data that we have without the same level of consideration for the implications of the data that may be missing. A thought-provoking example was raised in the medical field, where Ms. Perez highlighted that the administration of medications and treatment options of common diseases are often based on medical studies that disproportionately represent men in their sample size. As a result, the results that inform the drug's efficacy are often based on how men's bodies function rather than women's, and consequently may not be as efficacious in women or may result in side effects that weren't fully considered in the development and testing of the medication. So I referenced this particular highlight because it stuck with me as a potent example of the global implications and systematic impact of how a data set was derived and used. The same can be said of data that's used in financial services to make determinations about credit card issuance or extension of business loans. AI decision-making based on historical information is likely to favorably skew in favor of certain groups to the exclusion of others. We've seen these types of situations come up repeatedly in the past few years in enforcement actions and media reports. Having recognized the pitfalls and potential flaws in the use of data for AI training purposes, there's some good questions to ask. First, whether all data within the set is necessary to accomplish the AI's purpose. If not, consider cleansing the data to remove the extraneous information that can lead to skewed results. Has the data being contemplated for use in training the AI been provided with this use case in mind? Is such use appropriate? Should notification or disclosure requirements be considered to inform those who provided the data that it will be used in this way? What about privacy implications? How about the actual data sets? Are they truly representative of the relevant dimension that the AI is using in order to render the expected output? And finally, based on historical reasons, should weighting of certain attributes be adjusted to reflect the recognition that the data may not be complete, and as a result of its incompleteness, may result in an amplification of bias? Also, consider the situation where information is sensitive and it's provided within a particular context. Such information is typically stored in a specific location where access to it is managed through access rights provisioning, and there's a good chance that if it's sensitive, it's also encrypted at rest. Should this data be used for training an AI, it will likely need to be accessed by others within the organization who support the AI training and implementation efforts, but who don't necessarily fall within the group of users with the quote-unquote need to know for accessing this data when it was initially provided. Further, the data will need to be transferred and stored in a separate location that may not have the same access rights controls or enforce the same level of security. The data may also have been collected for a particular purpose and now may be used for a different purpose than originally disclosed. All of these aspects, among others, should be considered prior to using the data in furtherance of AI training and implementation initiatives. Now let's take a minute and turn to testing and interpretability. So it's crucial that the AI algorithm is rigorously tested to ensure that it's operating as intended and that the results that it yields are sufficiently transparent that they can be clearly explained. The ability to articulate and explain the AI's process is particularly important for financial services firms whose customers, internal stakeholders, and regulators will be looking to understand how the AI algorithm reached a particular decision. On this point in particular, I'd like to elaborate that there is a dual focus on assessing the AI. As previously noted, the data used to train the AI should of course be reviewed. However, we should also recognize the situation where the data inputs may appear unbiased, but the decisions that are generated are nonetheless discriminatory. And it's particularly important to be on the lookout for these situations and to address them before putting the AI in production. This aspect is discussed in greater detail a little later on and is what's meant when we say that we need to ensure that the AI is working as intended. Decisions rendered by the AI that impact on the services offered or provided to customers are very likely to be scrutinized to ensure that they are unbiased and non-discriminatory. This is especially the case where the decisions are fully automated and not reviewed by a human prior to being communicated to the end user. Common scenarios where this may arise is in the resume screening process or in the initial review of credit card applications. As such use cases are becoming increasingly prevalent, individuals are significantly and substantively impacted by these automated determinations, and the financial institutions building and using these tools are held responsible for their proper functioning. Let's go back to the New York DFS insurance circular for a moment and consider the use case where an AI is being fed data from multiple sources, both traditional and alternative, in an effort to generate a prediction that would inform an applicant's life insurance policy. The use of certain types of information that would inform this decision is clear, as it would come from the applicant's own disclosures as well as established sources to verify that information. But what about information that's purchased by the insurance company or that's derived from other external data sources as a means of establishing quote-unquote lifestyle indicators? The insurance company in this case would be well advised to verify the data's accuracy and consider whether it's inherently biased. So for instance, the use of geolocation data, education levels, and home address zip codes can serve as a proxy for inferences that implicate protected class data and would be prohibited from informing life insurance policy decisions. Other data sources are even murkier, such as the use of social media posts to assess an individual's lifestyle choices, and in turn inform the decision of whether to underwrite their policy. Though explainability varies based on the complexity of the model, firms should expect to be challenged on this point. It's prudent and advisable to clearly articulate and document the AI's training and development, including the data set used, the sources from which the data was obtained, and how the AI's design informs the resultant decision process. Ultimately, being able to explain the AI's output will go a long way in instilling trust and confidence in the use of this technology. It's also worth noting that in addition to being able to communicate the AI's use to internal stakeholders and regulators, firms should be prepared to disclose such use directly to their consumers, who may raise questions based on the firm's privacy policy, as well as in situations where they may challenge a decision made by the AI, such as in the case of a loan denial or declination of a credit card application. If such decisions are based on automated decision-making, firms should be able to articulate to the customer what data that decision was based on and the rationale applied that resulted in the AI's determination, with a view toward weeding out disparate impact to similarly situated individuals. So what becomes apparent in tying the points discussed thus far together is the benefit of a multidisciplinary governance and oversight body with representation from various areas throughout the organization in order to inform a holistic review of AI initiatives. This diverse governance body can contribute varying perspectives in assessing the AI's build-out and reviewing the business needs, desired capabilities, intended user base, applicable regulatory considerations, legal notice and disclaimer requirements, and cybersecurity and data governance aspects, among other areas. In addition to lending subject matter expertise and informing the firm's policies and procedures on AI implementation, a governance and oversight body provides visibility and support for the firm's AI strategy and serves as a means of escalation when necessary. It also ensures that there's appropriate supervision and accountability for the development and use of the AI, including policies, procedures, and approvals for its various applications. This approach may come across as time-consuming and onerous, and it is. But what's worth noting is that doing these things up front, setting up a governance body, clearly articulating its purpose, and identifying and engaging the right stakeholders will save time in the long run, as AI development and use is likely to be reviewed and scrutinized from multiple perspectives. Documenting the data sets that are used, the data's provenance, and principles for use lends credence and support in furtherance of transparency. Considering disclosures to clients, reviewing the applicable legal and regulatory guidance, and addressing the implications to properly safeguarding the data will also serve to support the responses that may be sought from regulators and law enforcement agencies down the line. Identifying the parameters that will drive the due diligence performed on third parties whose AI tools the firm may be considering will likewise function in support of demonstrating a thoughtful, risk-based approach and comprising a part of the firm's supervisory control framework. As many of these tools are likely to be hosted in the cloud, firms should also seek to determine what additional risks this setup poses and the types of protections afforded, including access rights provisioning, data transfer protocols, breach notification considerations, and others. Detailed documentation that indicates an awareness of the importance of data governance, privacy, and cybersecurity helps to bolster the AI development and should consider indicating where the underlying data and AI algorithm are stored, who has access to it, and the availability of audit trail functionality that's reflected of the changes that are made at a given point in time. This is important as it will support the response to an inquiry that may arise later, seeking to understand what parameters inform the AI's decision for a particular matter and whether that decision was driven by the principles of fairness and transparency that I discussed earlier. All of these and other topics require attention and from an organizational standpoint benefit from being holistically discussed and assessed by a governance body comprised of subject matter experts who can opine and provide guidance. As we're reaching the end of the talk, I'd wanted to conclude with a huge thanks to AI4 for furthering discussion on this complex and intriguing topic and for the opportunity to share my thoughts. It's worth noting that there are many other aspects of AI that pertain to financial services, and those mentioned are by no means an exhaustive list. Rather than going into exhaustive detail, I've tried to touch on some of the ones I've seen come up most recently to provide a window into the topics I think should be explored as these discussions progress. As this is an evolving space, for those who are interested in further reading, I've found the listed resources helpful, though of course there are many others. Thank you again for your time. I hope you found this talk informative.
Thank you so much, Marina, for sharing your thoughts with us. We really appreciate it, and this virtual audience is giving you a big round of applause.
Thank you.
Awesome. If you're looking for your next session, you can go ahead and check out the program page or take some time to do some virtual networking or explore the virtual exhibits. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you around.
Thank you.